ourselves out of this circumstance in one day or one performance.
All right, so Kmart, you were there this weekend. That was your game. And look, Mike Tomlin, before the season began, so much of the faith in the Steelers was based on our never-ending faith in him as a coach. So with it going as badly as it is, what is a reasonable amount of the blame for this to lay at the feet of the head coach?
So I think all of it. I really do. And that sounds really harsh, but as no nonsense a guy as Tomlin is, he's a great coach. Let me say that. He's a great coach, but that does not mean he's above criticism, right? As no nonsense as he is, I would have to think that Mike Tomlin, the way I know that he stands in front of these guys every week, I would have to assume that he has challenged them, talked to them about how what they display on this Sunday, that Sunday, is not good enough. And what have we seen repeatedly over the last few weeks? Play that is not good enough. And that 38-3 loss that I had to sit through, that was disgusting. If you're a Steelers fan, that was disgusting. And I think the players are doing Tomlin no favors. You have guys running the wrong routes. You have guys walking around thinking that they're better than they really are. You have guys that are not playing up to their potential. But what bothers me about what Tomlin's doing is I love all his quips and his Tomlinisms and don't see comfort. But the messaging seems to be falling on deaf ears because I covered this team a lot last year, and they always see, like sitting listening to these guys, it's the same stuff I heard last year. And that's why I didn't understand all the talk about Kenny Pickett. The Steelers have a much bigger problem than the QB position. So everybody clamoring, oh, we got to see Kenny Pickett. Throw Kenny Pickett out there. Well, we saw Kenny Pickett. Right. Unfortunately, Kenny Pickett was the only guy who actually physically fought for his team. That's the reality. And I think with Tomlin, he's talking about, I'm not afraid of making changes. But he hasn't made any changes. Bench guys, start different guys, do something else because what's going on is not working.
I don't think we need to protect Mike Tomlin. He certainly deserves some of this blame. But also, you talked about the roster construction. That's not his bailiwick. Like, he's responsible for coaching the team. He's not responsible for building the roster. And there are major holes in this roster. And this show is becoming the offensive line show every week, it feels like. But they have not built up. They're doing better at protecting, but they can't run the ball. And it seems like the way that we know these Steelers is defense and aggression and great O-line play. They aren't doing that. The last several drafts have been like, I don't know, it's the type of draft that you expect from teams that don't know what they're doing. It's like if you have all these problems last year, we saw all these problems with the O-line last year. Why are we drafting Kenny Pickett in the 20s? He's not going to solve your problems there. Why are we drafting, no disrespect to Najee Harris, he's great, but drafting Najee Harris
and
early in the draft,
like
when you have all these other issues that are like core to NFL football, and you're drafting pieces that feel like kind of icing on top, cherry on top pieces, like that's on the roster construction too.
So, Chris Canty, what do you see? The Steelers are a team that they never rebuild. They reload, which is why you take a running back in the first round. You figure, okay, we're a piece or two away. If they actually aren't, what does this mean? And just how bad is this going to get in Pittsburgh this year?
This means it's going to be Mike Tomlin's worst season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's probably going to have a losing season. And here's the thing, Kim, you're right. Mike Tomlin has to wear some of this because he is the head coach, but ultimately this is an organizational shortcoming because they didn't have an off-ramp from Ben Roethlisberger. If you look back to 2019 when Big Ben had that elbow surgery, you knew that that was the beginning of the end. You should have put a succession plan in place then. It would have been nice to maybe go the direction of drafting a quarterback in that 2021 class where you had 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. I'm not saying that solves everything, but you look at that position, you also look at up front with the offensive line, to Dom's point, that O-line is 27th in run block wins. The back end of their defense is bereft of talent. You're talking about them being 24th in opponent QBR. It ain't Mike Tomlin's fault that Trey Norwood decided to try to do somebody else's job and get beat 98 yards on a sluggo. That ain't on Mike Tomlin. That's because you don't have the talent on the back end, and that's from the general manager, Kevin Colbert. Not Omar Khan, who just took over. That's Kevin Colbert.
I just wish I could cry, or like one tear, because the offensive line coverage I mean, I'm just so happy. I can't tell you, it's like joy. But to your point, to Kim's point, if you're either coaching it or allowing it. And so to your point about, hey, he's not out there, You can't get that if you can't get beat. If you're going to get beat like that, then you're on the sideline with me and somebody else is going in there, right? Like, and I'm not
who else
telling
is
you,
going in there?
Well,
That's the point.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it can't get worse than 38-3. So at least you're now developing and you're bringing something to the culture of the locker room, saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate. And listen, I'm not a huge Belichick fan of the way, but if a dude makes a mistake on his team, he'll be on the sideline with them, right? Like, we're all going to watch this thing together. I think at some point you're coaching in the line, and again, this is not all on Mike Tomlin. I think he is a heck of a football coach, but things are being allowed in that organization that we have not seen in years. And if you're the Steelers and you can't run the ball and you can't stop the run, it's ugly. Yeah. And right now, that's happening in Pittsburgh.
We are going to come back to this a little later this morning, and we will ask one big question then. If they wind up with a top 3 or 4 pick, which our analytics suggest they're going to, do they take a quarterback in the first round again for the second consecutive year?
Yeah,
we'll talk about that and more as we go. But right now, baseball postseason getting rolling. ALDS is.
And we embrace that. We know what comes along with that is when we don't achieve victory, the scrutiny is probably a little higher. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And when we come up short, we're going to be accountable. We're not going to flip out, go crazy. We're going to get back to the basics, find a way to get on the right track, and hopefully this week will be a bounce back.
Okay, so I'm just going to say it. Like, we joke around a lot about some of the things he says. That was one of the most sensible, and I loved every word of that. If I'm a fan of the team and candidly a teammate on that team, that's exactly what I want to hear him say in that situation. There is, however, one overriding question that remains. Just how good is this team? It's one thing for the expectations to be that they are what they've been for the last decade or so, but are they anymore?
It doesn't feel like those expectations should be that high. Offensively, they're struggling for identity. I don't know, or I feel like I do know what they do well. Don't get too excited, Jeff, but they run the ball. They do well. But that's not what they've been doing this season, and they've had some embarrassing losses, and they haven't had any impressive wins. So while I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to this team, this feels like a different team than it was last year. Last year, after they had a slow start, they ripped off a bunch of wins in a row and were impressive in those wins. When they had injuries in key situations, they found a way to succeed. Now it seems like the adversity that comes to their doorstep, they don't have an answer for it. Maybe they will by the end of the season, but I'm no longer going to assume that they will like I was 2 weeks ago.
No, Kmart, I sat there on Sunday. When that game ended, I tweeted, I am so looking forward to spending another week with everyone on Get Up telling me how good the Packers are when all visual evidence to the contrary makes it obvious that they're not. Their defense isn't as good as we thought. Their receivers are exactly as not so good as we thought. They have a great quarterback, and right now they don't have practically anything obviously else.
But here's the thing. When you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, the Super Bowl is the expectation. The short of that is a disappointment. That's just the reality. I understand the roster constraints. I understand what we're looking at on paper and what we see on film and on game day, but that's the reality. Right now, Rodgers is 29th out of all the QBs throwing outside the numbers. The only 2 QBs who are worse, Davis Mills and Baker Mayfield. That is how bad things are in Green Bay. Yeah. But the whole offseason was set up to pay Aaron Rodgers. We're okay with Devontae Adams leaving. We're going to go with these young guys. Okay. We'll make it work. The run game was a strength. Why is it not a strength anymore? Why are we straying from what we're good at, especially when...
Here's an answer.
Here we go.
I got a great answer.
Here we go again.
You want to talk about common sense isn't common? Have a 17-point lead and then don't run the football. And then when the Giants tie you up at 20 all, go 3 and out and take 9 seconds off the clock because you throw it 3 times. That is dumb football. And a team that runs the ball 8 times and passes it 17 times in the second half is not a team that's playing in their strengths. I have a big issue with Matt LaFleur and what Aaron Rodgers are doing right now because, again, all these checks you see on the goal line, he hands that ball off, it's walking in. I get the blitz, it's going to be confusing, it's going to be all these things, but at some point you play to your strengths, and when you have 2 backs like that, you don't give A.J. Dillon 6 touches. It just doesn't fit. And again, we knew the receivers were going to be a work in progress. So I understand the numbers, they are what they are. I think those numbers get better as soon. But in the interim, you have to play to your strengths. And their defense has not been what they expected. But again, all those things play complementary football. When you can do one, you're usually better at stopping the other. And right now, they don't have an identity to what Fox said earlier.
Yeah, I'm right there with Jeff. I mean, you look at what Wake Martindale, the DC for the Giants, did. They were out there with 6 or 7 defensive backs on some plays.
And by the way, they were giving up 5 yards a carry.
You got to
run defense.
You got to run teams out of that kind of stuff. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers was 0 for 6 on attempts beyond 20 yards from the line of scrimmage on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's because they were taking away the passing game, and you got to lean on your run game. And quite frankly, that's when the Packers have had success. That's when they get their explosive plays, when they set up opportunities through play action. It ain't Aaron Rodgers dropping back in shotgun and getting it done.
Listen, I really don't understand. Like, I don't understand when you look at defenses. Like, I remember when I played forever, I'm looking at this, I say, hey, they're 25th in the league in stopping the run. We're probably going to run it a little more than normal. They're really good stopping the pass and putting pressure. We're probably